All right. Hello, everybody. It's good to be here. I must admit, this is kind of an awkward setup. The first time I've done a virtual conference from my house and not in person. So, I'm Nick Huzar, founder and CEO of OfferUp. And, I'd like to dig in today and talk about community building and how it's really impacted, our business. So I thought I'd start with a little bit on the story and why the heck we started this company and get into a little bit more detail on how we've built community around the brand, over the years. For those that may not be familiar with OfferUp, we've been installed over 90 million times. We have billions of dollars in monthly transactions that occur on our marketplace. We're one of the top shopping apps in the United States. And I don't think we'd be in this position today if we weren't actively listening to our community members. And one of the ways I often engage and try to meet both buyers and sellers is simply by using the product. So if you can see my office at home here, quite a few things in here are actually purchased from OfferUp. And so that's a good time for me to go out and meet people, ask them how we make the product work better. There's still, while we've been doing this, I've been doing this almost 9 years now, there's still a lot of friction and a lot of things we can do to make it better for our community members. So I use the product a lot. What you see on the screen here is one of my favorite purchases, is one of these big, huge spring-free trampolines. You can see that I got this one for $875. This one, brand new, is $2,500. So got an amazing deal on OfferUp. So again, just rewinding the tape, I figured I'd give you some history. I had no plans on starting this company, but what I realized was, value was locked up all around us. For me, I had a room full of stuff and a daughter on the way. And I thought to myself, man, there's got to be a better way. How can I sell all this stuff and make these things discoverable? And that personal pain point led to a much, bigger question that I asked, which was, am I alone in this? Like, does everyone have this problem? What about small merchants? Like, do they have the same kind of challenge? And what I discovered was, 25% of US households with a 2-car garage can't park in their garage. The hottest growing area in real estate is not residential, not commercial. It's actually storage. You can wrap a 7x7 square of storage space around every man, woman, and child in this country. And then on top of that, if you look at just commerce in general, like 85% of commerce is still not online today. And that's hard to believe, I think, for a lot of us in tech. There's a lot of amazing, large, tech companies that are helping to facilitate commerce, but the vast majority of commerce is still local. It's convenient, it's down the street, and I don't think that's clearly going through a big change right now. So again, when I thought about OfferUp and creating community around what we're building, I really thought of a platform for local commerce, and we want to become the platform for almost anything you need locally. Over time. So that's really our focus. And to get there, we started, again, with a mobile phone. We started by focusing on the resale marketplace because we felt like that was a great way to get scale pretty quickly. Everyone has a need to get things and get rid of things. And, again, 9 years ago, it was kind of a stretch, but we believed that eventually everyone was going to have these in their pockets. And because of that, we could really reimagine local commerce as we know it. So next slide, please. So as you build a company, I think the first part is clearly having an idea. And then the next part around community building is actually getting people to join your team, building a company around an idea. And, to start, you don't really have a mission and a vision. We clearly didn't. And it's something I think that we kind of over time continued to tweak and think about really what matters. And so, what you see here is really our mission over time, which is to build the largest, simplest, and most trustworthy marketplace. And our vision is to empower people to connect and prosper. And I'll explain a little bit more about why this matters, especially I think during what I call COVID times. We've hired quite a few people. We've hired at least 50 people now that have never stepped foot in our office. And so, how do we interview? How do we find people that really believe in the mission and the company that we're building? That's really important, especially right now, because again, we haven't seen a number of our employees, face to face. So unpacking our mission a little bit more, when we think of largest, like what does that mean to us? It's not only inventory, but it's also number of users, how many items are sold, how many transactions are we facilitating, every single month. And we think of simplest, we think of the entire buying and selling process from end to end. And so again, for me, when I started OfferUp, I had a room full of stuff. I just wanted to take a picture and at least make it discoverable. But then you think of the entire buying and selling experience and you realize that, hey, wait, how do we communicate? How do we actually move goods? How do we recommend maybe safe locations to meet? So you add all these variables up and you can see that there's still a lot of friction in local commerce. And so that's a big part of what we mean simple. We're trying to remove as much friction in that experience, as we possibly can. And then, trustworthy is really important. In our case, we are bringing millions of people together every month face to face. It is very different than putting something in a box and shipping it. And so when we think about trust, there's a lot of different factors and things we think about, and I'll explain that a little bit more, as we move on. But one basic example of that would be our community meetup spots. We actually recommend safe locations for buyers and sellers to meet. It has to be a well-lit location. It has to have a camera. And that's something that we partner with not only retail locations, but also law enforcement agencies. So we now have thousands of these around the country, but it's just yet again another example of what we mean when we think about trust. And then lastly, again, on our vision, it's really about, at our core, like, what does it mean to empower people to connect and prosper? It means buyers are finding the things that they want, and they're getting, a good deal and getting good value. And sellers, the same thing. We're making it easy for them, and maybe they're selling, a chair, and they're getting a little bit extra money in their pocket. And so, or in some cases, for some people, it could just be getting space in their garage back, which is clearly a challenge for, I think, a lot of us. So, next slide, please. So if you think about, as we built the company, I call this kind of the core or the three legs of the stool for OfferUp. And it requires all three legs to be successful. Like, you remove any one of these and we don't have a growing, thriving marketplace. So as I mentioned before, simplicity from the end-to-end experience is really, really critical. So taking a picture is very easy. How do I browse and engage and look at items? So if you open up OfferUp, based on your location and based on maybe some of your shopping patterns, we then show you, a very personalized experience when you open up OfferUp, and that's all very intentional. You'll see that it's designed to be very visual, to be very engaging, and then we think about things like chat, and chat is very important because historically, pre-smartphone, most people that would do local transactions would end up sharing their phone number or an email to close the end of the transaction. And we just thought, like, why give out any personal information? Why can't you just consummate the entire transaction all within the OfferUp experience? We recently introduced shipping back in 2018. And one of the reasons we did that was to, again, help remove local friction. So if you wanted to buy something, say, across town, you didn't necessarily have to get in the car. You could pay a few dollars and have that item delivered to you. So these are all examples of, as we think about end-to-end friction, where we're focused. Trust, I kind of mentioned a little bit about meetup spots. I don't know if you can see this well, but you can see again on OfferUp, you want to know who you're dealing with. So this is my profile page. It's a picture of my son and I. You can see all the transactions I've done. You can see that I'm communicative. I show up on time. I've got a 5-star rating. So it just gives you a little bit more color and trust on who you're actually transacting with. And then, as I mentioned before, liquidity, a really important part, because we could have a simple experience. We could have things like ratings and meetups. But if people aren't buying and selling, you're not going to have a thriving marketplace. So that has been very important for us. We continue to invest a lot in liquidity and data science and figuring out how to best match buyers and sellers together. So, because of all of that, OfferUp has grown really, really quick. In fact, most of our growth, is word of mouth. And so it's really interesting to see how people are, adapting to these times, especially during COVID. I can tell you kind of, anecdotally, We've seen more people doing what I call porch pickups, where they'll simply say, "Hey, I'll leave the chair outside on the mat, and just put some money down, and I'll just wave at you through the door." And so not really meeting face to face. Or we've seen auto dealers that are also adapting, where they'll do title, they'll do financing online, and they'll simply drive the car over to the buyer's house, wave at them through the window and leave the keys. And so it's interesting to see how people, or just communities in general, are finding ways to continue to conduct local commerce during this time. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about the company overall. Again, we're growing very, very quickly. We have about 44 million annual users that engage on the marketplace, and over 60 million annual meetups. And again, I was kind of talking about community, and it really is, I think, in our case, a big part of our company, because we are meeting people face to face, or connecting people face to face. And it's interesting, kind of what our goods, our items say about one another. I mean, we've seen people that have met to buy and sell kids gear and become family friends. We've actually seen marriages before. There was a couple that was buying a woman that was selling an iPad, and met a man at McDonald's and got married. And so there's a lot of interesting stories that you hear through these local meetups. As I mentioned before, quite a few downloads, over 90 million to date, and a top shopping app. And it's been great to see we're up there with the Amazons of the world and some really respectable marketplaces in the App Store. Next slide, please. So another way we really have thought about building community around the brand is to engage in them in a different way. And so starting last year, we launched our annual re-commerce report. And this year we just did our second report. And this year in particular, because we were entering a very unprecedented time, we wanted to understand our communities, and in particular, take a look at busy families and parents. And today, parents are under more, I think, financial and just social media type pressures than ever before. We've started to see, and what we learned from the report, this report in particular, that parents are spending more per child and are concerned about the impact that their shopping habits are actually having on the world that their children are going to inherit. And so I think people are definitely spending more time just thinking about those things in general. 71% of parents are definitely worried about their personal finances, and 81% described their level of parenting stress as medium or high. And I would say, I'm shocked my son hasn't came crying to my window or done something crazy while I've been on this virtual event. But I think for those parents out there, you know what I'm talking about. So I think despite having financial pressures, 64% of parents have purchased items for their children as a direct result of coronavirus. I would say that the Nintendo Switch right now is very, very hot, especially a lot of bikes and toys and things to entertain children are definitely a lot higher, lot higher engagement and posting velocity on the OfferUp marketplace than we've ever seen. 39% of parents are turning to online marketplaces like OfferUp to buy babies and kids items. And it's really interesting to see some of the mix in the category changes. So searching for things like puzzles and video games is up over 1,000% in the last number of months since COVID. So you thought toilet paper and hand sanitizer were highly sought after. Who would have thought that those old puzzles that you have in the back of your closet are worth something? So maybe dust those things off and mark them up, because the number of searches for puzzles is up 1,000%. It's pretty crazy. And again, our vision has always been to empower and connect people to prosper. And I think, especially right now, that's really never been more important. So I'd encourage everyone, I think, to think about this time and reach out to parents or your neighbors and ask them how you can all help, because I think everyone's in this together. And it's been great to see how the OfferUp community has been just kind of adapting as things have evolved and changed. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I think throughout a lot of this that, community has really been a really important part of the business. So not only how we get feedback from buyers and sellers, how we build out our own team and our own internal community. But I'm excited to also share, and this is news we shared last month, that we're going to be growing our community, pretty significantly. So we recently announced that we've acquired the Let Go marketplace, and that will help us to grow in a pretty meaningful size in a big way with over 20 million monthly active users throughout the country. So we're very excited about that. I think that's going to expand our reach, not only in large marketplaces where we have almost 20% market penetration, like LA, for example, but will also help us to grow into other markets where maybe we're not as big throughout the country. And so, as I mentioned before, I think value is really, locked up. It's still in our homes. It's still in local merchants. How do we help to unlock that value? With 85% of commerce still not online today, it's really our focus as a company to figure out, how can we go back to those three legs of the stool? How can we bring trust? How can we make sure we're driving liquidity? And how can we make that end-to-end experience as simple as we can for buyers and sellers, on the marketplace? So, with that, I'm really curious, maybe in chat, how others are adapting or thoughts around that. And I'll definitely, open it up to questions that I see kind of coming in already. Hold on. Alrighty. Sorry, I'm trying to read through a few of these. One person asked, do I think Facebook's the in-game winner? Well, I would say that I think anytime you're going after a huge market, you're going to have a lot of interest in other markets or other companies that are interested in that. I think with 85% of commerce still not online, there's still plenty of opportunity. I mean, we're not all going home and shopping at Walmart today, and there's a reason for that. So do I think they're focused on it? For sure. But I also think that, this is all we do all day, and we're really obsessed over doing one thing and one thing well. And if history has shown me anything, usually the focus player is the one that tends to be the largest in the end. But we'll see. There's a lot of opportunity out there. Another question: what underserved elements of the community management stack are essential, but are better brought in by SaaS versus building in-house? That's a good question. So, we do leverage a lot of third parties to get scale and do things quickly. So, for example, our payments are facilitated via Stripe. We also do shipping, which we leverage Shippo. So, when we can, and there are ways to get scale efficiently, we will definitely look to third parties to help with that. First, 0 to 500 listings. How did that happen, and what did you focus on first? Oh man, I never want to go through that again. So for anyone building out marketplaces, you probably know the cold start problem. This took us over a year to figure out, and we don't have enough time today for me to share all of the learnings of things that have failed. But I used to hack a lot. So I would go and it was very rare we had more than 50 items a day, right? People would just randomly post things. We didn't have a lot of really active buyers and sellers, but I would show up to sellers' homes and I would buy things. I would never say I worked at OfferUp. I would just buy it because I wanted them to think it actually worked. And then I would bring those things back to our office. And we had about a 400 square foot office at the time with maybe 5 people in there coding. And it was just stuff everywhere. It looked like a bad, unorganized Goodwill. But again, I wanted sellers to I wanted them to think it worked. I wanted them to believe that the liquidity was real. And then I would also post their items again back on OfferUp because we didn't have enough inventory. So ultimately, we kind of figured out kind of the right playbook, and we really focused. We actually stayed in one zip code only, and we were disciplined. We said, if we can't get liquidity here, we will never get it anywhere. So I think that was the focus. And I tell you, there was a number of other startups that had raised considerably more money than we did at the time, but they didn't focus on liquidity. And so because of that, they've all kind of went by the wayside over the years. What time period do you measure liquidity? 7 days or 30, et cetera. So we look at everything. We look at day 1 sell through. We look at day 7. We look at day 30. Those are very important milestones. But what's interesting about OfferUp is the vast majority of items will sell very, very quickly. So within the first week or two, you're going to sell most of your inventory. That said, there is a very long tail on OfferUp. So if you post skis right now, for example, probably not going to get a lot of engagement. But come, when snow starts falling, all of a sudden now you're going to get, engagement back on that. I'm back on those skis. So it's kind of interesting to see how those marketplace dynamics, change over time. Do you have ways to incentivize the meetup? So that's a really good question. And one of the challenges I know in all local commerce is how do you make sure buyers and sellers show up? There's things we're working on right now that I won't disclose today, but we do have some ideas on how we can build more accountability into local. But I know it is a big challenge. Nothing is more frustrating than having someone commit to meet with you at say 3 o'clock on a Saturday and they don't show up. So I think that's a solvable problem. Clearly, it's going to require some innovation, but there are things we're working on to get there. Do you think clusters are in a good way to ramp up from the beginning? Consider curation. Let's see. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe repeat that question. Simplify that for me, maybe. One question was about using brand ambassadors to acquire more users. And so we've thought about that over time. I think what we have found, and we found that if we just focus on the product, if we focus on, the 3 parts of the stool, that we grow the fastest. So most of our growth is word of mouth. We have spent dollars on marketing, but we found that if we continue to focus on the product a lot, then word of mouth takes over, and that's how we've grown the quickest. So, we have kind of dabbled in the early days and thought about how to attract some influencers, but we just haven't seen it. At least for us, we haven't seen it move the needle that much. What's the biggest challenge with your current model that is servicing due to your massive scale? So one of our challenges, especially right now during COVID, is we have a huge influx in demand, but supply doesn't move at the same rate. And so we have some more things that we're going to be releasing here very soon that help to, solve some of those problems. But that by far is one of the bigger challenges. Like if you're selling a puzzle, who would have thought, you're going to get so much engagement on that. And so it's a lot of work. So, we're trying to find ways to better balance supply and demand. And there's no way we could have expected a huge influx of demand due to COVID, but we do have some solutions we're putting out there to hopefully get supply to scale a lot faster. Let's see. Are cars a top marketplace opportunity? Yes. So we estimate that OfferUp facilitates almost 10% of all the used cars in the country. So that's millions and millions of cars. So we're probably one of the top places to sell a car in the country. So, there's a lot of work we're doing to continue to, I think, improve on that experience. I think historically, if you were buying a pair of shoes or you're buying a car on OfferUp, it's pretty much been the same. But I think in the last few years, we've really been spending more time and resources and really investing more in our autos business, just given how big of a scale that we've already seen there. Are sellers asking for more payout options than just bank accounts? For sure. And I think that's another big area as we ramp up payments, as we'll continue to add more and more of those into our offering. But shipping was the first time we brought payments into the marketplace. So looks like I ran out of time. I'm getting the boot. No problem, but enjoyed it. Unfortunately, couldn't see each other face to face, but hope everyone's doing well during this crazy time. And thanks for listening.